good evening, and what's up, family? Man, as you can see, I'm always so excited for these wonderful episodes of, you know the song, yeah. Can we talk for a minute? Girl, Rebecca, I want to, well, I already know her name is Rebecca. See, I got to put that in because I'm talking about my wife. How about that? But listen, thank you so much for your support, for following us, man, for just being a part of this podcast. And so as I always ask you, please take a second. If you're on Facebook, share this. Tag somebody. Let them know, man, that Pastor Shy is on the air. And please make sure that you have subscribed to our YouTube page, right? Because we don't want you to miss anything that we got going on over here. Now, to get started, you ask people, do you want the good news or the bad news? Most people say, give me the bad news first. And so I got to give you the bad news, guys. Unfortunately, this is the last episode of season 3. I know. But listen. If you stick with me to the end, I have a very special announcement. So make sure that you watch this all the way through and tune in, because at the very end, I have an announcement that I think you are going to be really excited about. So for this last topic, right, of Can We Talk? I want to talk from the topic, can men be monogamous? Ooh. Can we talk? Can we talk? Right? Because I don't know if you have been on Instagram lately, TikTok, but there's a pastor. His name is Pastor Andy Thompson. And the only reason I quote his name is because his page is public and what he said is public, right? So there's a prominent pastor named Andy Thompson, and recently he talked about the fact or the question of, can men be monogamous?
Is one of the ways that we judge the character of a guy today. We are approaching a time in which, when it comes to this, women are becoming more powerless. I don't know if sexual exclusivity is going to be something that they will be able to continue to demand in monogamy. We're asking people to go from 40 flavors of milkshake to 1. But the minute you commit to this relationship, you can only have 1 flavor from now on. If we're going to redefine what male roles are and redefine what female roles are, then we may have to be prepared to redefine what the acceptable behavior is within exclusive relationships.
After seeing that clip, I'm sure that you have an opinion about that subject. As a matter of fact, as this particular clip has started to go viral, there's been a lot of responses, a lot of emotions, and a lot of feelings about what he said. And especially because he's a pastor, there's been a lot of almost outrage from certain people in the church. Now, I'm going to be honest. I haven't read all the comments, but just based on what I've been hearing, it just seems like there's an overwhelming sense that his thought on monogamy is not right? Because he's basically saying that society is moving into a place which seems to, based on what he says, includes the church, where men being monogamous is going to come to an end. Now, for those of you that just automatically dismiss what he said, right? You just, the minute it came out of his mouth, you was almost like the Pharisees. You wanted to rip, blasphemy! You was, no! I feel you. But for those that said there's no way he said that, and how could he say that? Well, let me talk to you for a minute, because for those that believe that there's no way for somebody to think that men cannot be monogamous, can I just talk to some of you who are in a relationship with somebody whom you know is in a relationship with somebody else. Yeah. Now, initially, when you say that, when you talk about people dating somebody who's dating somebody else, and the fact that that would be considered wrong, most people tend to think that this only applies to married people, because most people at least have some type of concept of believing that it's wrong to date somebody who's married. But is it not wrong to date somebody whom you know is simultaneously dating somebody else, especially if the two don't know about each other? Or what about those of you, or I'm not going to say you, but those in the world, how about that, who have boyfriends and girlfriends while also having hookup partners? How about that? They got boyfriends and friends with benefits, girlfriends and friends with benefits. Is that wrong? Before you throw your stones at Pastor Andy, what about those of you that may not be in a physical relationship, but you have work wives? You got work husbands. And for those that think, well, what's so wrong with that? Well, is there something wrong with the fact that you share more with your work wife than you do your real wife? Is there something wrong that you share your deepest feelings, your concerns with your work husband, and you talk to your real husband and share none of those thoughts, none of those feelings, none of those emotions? Because the fact of the matter is that when it comes to cheating on somebody, when it comes to stepping outside of the relationship, I've come to find out that cheating doesn't begin in the bedroom. It normally happens in your DMs. It normally happens in those phone calls, those text messages. It normally happens not in the bedroom, but online. Because by the time it gets to the bedroom, the cheating has already happened. It's just not yet been consummated. So by the time you get to the bedroom, you're just saying this is official, but it was happening before we got here. Because again, for those that would just be so quick to say, Pastor Andy is absolutely out of pocket, I came across another clip by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he also taught basically that polygamy was something that was used to ensure the security of women.
Because all of us have a biological need. Those social conditions, when you have a preponderance of women and a small population of men, there's not enough men for the women. This puts the women in severe competition with each other for the men, and it leads to prostitution and homosexual behavior. As a means of balancing the society, he will never tolerate prostitution, and he will never tolerate homosexual behavior, so he tolerated polygamy to bring balance back to that society.
He taught that it might not be as wrong as we think, because the notion of polygamy was to create a society where women would not have to fend for themselves. And to endorse this idea, he brought up the fact, especially in the black community, of how many black men are incarcerated, leaving the pool small for women. And then he also threw in the fact of how many other black men are homosexuals, which made the pool a puddle, right? Because, straight men to straight women, the numbers are really very imbalanced. So based on those type of things, the minister said that one of the best ways to make sure that our women are properly taken care of is by allowing a man to have more than one wife. Woo, this is getting hot in here. Can we talk? Can we talk? Because for those that, again, dismiss the concept completely, there are others who would say, well, what about the Old Testament? Because in the Old Testament, did you guys know that polygamy was a common practice, right? That it was nothing new to see a man having multiple wives. Even in some parts of the world, they still practice polygamy. Now, for those of us who are Bible believers, though we see it in the Old Testament, when you come to the New Testament, you see a standard that's not so much a new standard, but God's perfect standard from the beginning. Because in the beginning, God makes it plain that his ideal way for us to live was one man with one woman enjoying one relationship. Now, there were different reasons why it was allowed, but just because something is allowed does not mean it was intended. So what God intended is not always seen in what's allowed. So you might say, well, why would he allow it? Because he's dealing with you. He's dealing with us. He told Moses, I never wanted y'all to get divorced, but because of the hardness of your heart, I allowed it so that some woman would not, or some child would not have to fend for themselves because they were not allowed to work back then. And if they didn't have a man taking care of them, they were basically homeless. And so God said, for the benefit of the community, I'm not going to put a woman or a child in a situation where they have to starve because the wife can't get a divorce. Speaking of which, because here's one of the things that I want us to talk about. Because when people talk about having multiple wives, multiple women, multiple boo things, I need you to understand the premise of why that was allowed. Because the premise of why that was allowed was to primarily take care of another woman and her children. It wasn't just to have choices. Yeah. It wasn't just to have multiple flavors, if you will. So if you are a man who wants to subscribe to having multiple wives, my question is, are you willing to tell all your wives to stop working? Are you willing to financially support the wives and the children of all the wives you want to have, or do you just want more flavors in the bedroom? Can we talk? Because these things seem to be popping up, these ideas that were once taboo in the church. They are now being talked about in the church. And I believe one of the reasons that this is happening is because we live in a society where the church is often conforming to the world instead of transforming the world by being transformed into the image of God. In today's church, it seems like we are more concerned with being accepted by the world instead of showing the world what God deems as acceptable. What does this mean? This means that for believers, and I want to talk to my believers tonight, God's perfect will should always be our standard, regardless of the standard in society. God's perfect will should always be our standard, regardless of the standard in society. So when you hear society changing their standard, our response should be, I see what society is doing, but in spite of society, what is God's perfect will? Because what about instead of telling men that it's okay to have multiple women, what would happen if godly men raised up a standard that showed the world how to love one woman? Yeah. I wonder what would happen if instead of trying to push polygamy, that monogamy became such of a norm. Maybe this disparity between the number of available men and available women would change because we would stop having children outside of wedlock. Maybe if we said, I'm going to stick with one, we wouldn't have so many that we didn't want. Can we talk? I wonder if we changed the standard. Maybe instead of men being proud of how many women they slept with, they would rather be proud of how many women they've committed to spend their lives with. Because I want you to know that for me, it's easier to be uncommitted versus what it takes to be committed to one. It's not hard to make so many women happy when all you're doing them is giving the fun part. But what about the woman that you got to go through life with? Well, what about the woman who's raising your kids? What about the woman who's helping pay your bills? To go through all of that and still put a smile on her face, I think it takes more of a man to do that than just to do whatever you want to do. Now, I get it. I'm not saying that if we hold the standard, the world's going to keep a standard. No, I understand. Guys, in the end, the world is going to be the world. But my question is, when is the church going to be the church. Because at some point, we got to put a line in the sand. Because if we don't have a line in the sand, then that means anything goes. And is that the type of world we want to live in, where it doesn't matter what we do? Yeah. So here's the thing, because I know you're thinking, Pastor Shai, you still ain't told us what you think. Okay, we talking. I'm gonna tell you what I think. I think that especially if you married and you're thinking about doing this, go see what your wife thinks. Yeah, I want you to. I can't even say it. I want you to go home and just tell your wife, listen, I was listening to a man of God, and I got the revelation that I can have another wife. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you decide to do that, just know, I ought to put my number at the bottom of the screen because Pastor Shai does funerals. I just want you to know that if you decide to tell your wife you're going to get you another woman, that I am more than available to do your funeral. But at the end of the day, I've been married for 30 years. And for 30 years, I've been committed to one woman. For 30 years, I've gone through the highs and lows of being married. For 30 years, I've gotten to experience almost everything that this one woman has to offer. But after 30 years, I'm still learning about the woman that I married 30 years ago. Because what I found out is that I don't have to go outside to get another woman. I can go inside and find another woman in the woman that I married. Woo! I know that was good. That was good to me. Because what you're going to find out is that what you need might be hidden in what you have. But it takes work to pull that out versus finding it on the shelf. I got to go. I know this is good. I got to go. But listen, I told you that I had some news for you. Well, here's the news. That while tonight is the final episode of this season of Can We Talk, coming in October is going to be a brand new podcast. And guess what? It's going to be me and my girl. We're doing the Marriage is Dope podcast. Come on, I hear you. So starting October, right? We're going to have a new time. We're going to have a lot of new stuff. But my wife and I, we're going to be talking about marriage and relationships, man. And I think if you enjoy this, you better get ready because you're really going to enjoy that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to prepare yourself. We will have the flyer, we'll have the dates, we'll have the time. Keep supporting, right? Because ultimately, my goal, our goal, is to share something, not just to talk about, but something that will make us better because we had the conversation. So guys, that's my time. I'll see you again, season 4. We don't know when that's coming because the next thing that's coming is season 1. Woo, I can't believe it. Season 1 of Marriage is Dope. It's dope. Oh, I forget, y'all too young to remember. MCs and my people call me Milk. Y'all know that? Okay. Anyway, so listen, I gotta go. Enjoy the rest of your night. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. And we'll see you again for season 4 of Can We Talk and season 1 of Marriage is Dope.